Welcome students to the next session in the Open Elective course, Public Relations and Advertising. Today we'll be looking at different forms of public relations, brand building. We'll also be looking at the different types of public relations in different fields and how it is exercised there, different ways in which public relations is also exercised. So let's get into the class. So what is brand building? There is a picture of the very famous Colgate smile logo. Don't know if you've noticed, but the smile is white and the logo is also white on red, which is to show a certain, gives you a certain image of what the brand and what it stands for. We are all familiar with Colgate, and why I chose Colgate for this is because of the definite brand loyalty that a brand like Colgate enjoys in the eyes of the public. Now, what is the core concept of why we actually see a logo and understand that brand, what it stands for, and why people stick on to certain brands? That is because of the exercise that has been done throughout the history of that brand, and that exercise is brand building. Now, what is brand building? Brand building is an integral aspect of personal and business development. It not only increases the voice and consumer awareness of a brand, but also gives it an identity and worth. Now, this identity is what was actually what I was referring to when you see the logo and you see something uh, very quintessentially familiar to you. And you also know the worth of that whole brand. It's not the market assessment or the profits that the parent company makes. It's the worth of that brand to an individual who is a consumer of that brand. It holds a certain value for that person. Now, building a brand to that level of acceptance and loyalty is not an easy task, and that whole thing actually is a long-term process. That is what is brand building. What do you do to build a brand? Which is the next question. Now, there are 4 steps that are given here. It's a very long process with many different ups and downs throughout the history of a brand, but generally what it is brand salience and how resilient a brand is and how relevant it is at the point of time. Second is performance and imagery, how well the brand sticks to the people, how the imagery actually sticks to people. I told you the Colgate, white Colgate smile on the logo, and the performance of the brand, not just in the market, but in the minds of the consumer, how well it is actually reinventing itself to be relevant, how it's actually doing its public relations, how it's actually carrying out its advertising campaigns. All these things add up to how the brand is actually built over a period of time. Judgment and feelings, you make sure that how people feel about the brand is quite important, and you make sure that it has a certain identity with respect to how people feel about the brand. You can think about different brands that you use daily, and you can see how you feel about it. In general, it every certain brand will have a certain feeling evoked in a certain person if he is using it. If he's not using it, also sometimes you will have feelings evoked through that brand's imagery. But still, the ones that you use will definitely have some kind of an attachment you would have towards that brand in terms of the quality, in terms of the longevity that you have been using that brand, etc. Step 4 is brand resonance, how much it resonates to the audiences that is actually consuming it. It's similar to the feeling part, but it's actually a constant process of making sure that you stay relevant to the person who is actually using it through different means. You keep changing with the times, you understand who your target audience is, who your potential custom consumer base is, and you make sure that your brand stays alive and always resonates to what the consumer is expecting. Now, why are we studying brand building when we are actually talking about public relations? Now, public relations is a very essential part of brand building where you are constantly interacting, or public relations is helping the public interact with the brand as well as the brand interact with the public. The two-way communication street that Edward Bernays said or has stated in his book Crystallizing Public Opinion, and that has been followed since. Public relations has been an integral part of how brand building occurs due to this communication line, and most it actually helps the brand stay healthy to make sure that the consumer base is uh, staying loyal to them or expanding into new markets. So public relations helps to build the image and reputation of the brand using different tools. Most definitely helps in building a brand since it's an intrinsic part of brand building, and is widely acknowledged that public relations is all about credibility and careful messaging. The coverage that results is an outcome of a planned media outreach that has gone through layers of approvals by company spokespersons, management, and the editorial team in the media. So there is a process, step-by-step process by which you actually make sure that what you are actually talking about a brand is what the brand requires to be feasible, viable, reliable to a consumer base. Now, how do you make sure that the messaging is all right? By conducting PR exercise on it, by making sure that the public relations aspect of that brand is actually on point. Results of well planned and thought out campaigns are manifold and turn out to be immensely beneficial for a brand in the long run. PR may also be acknowledged as a very important and dynamic service for brand building because it helps in building a good working relationship with clients and also building image of a particular brand. This is what we were talking about, it being a two-way communication thing. Building an image by actually working with the people who are not only your clients but also the people who are actually consuming the brand. It also plays a vital role in building the reputation of a brand and consistently maintaining it. Consistently maintaining is a very important part because PR is a constant exercise. It's a constant process that goes on whenever some kind of activity takes place with respect to the brand. Any activity, like I said, is usually publicity. But in terms of monitoring every activity and making sure that it is actually helping towards the maintenance of the health of that brand, then it becomes a public relations exercise which directly or indirectly, mostly directly, adds up to brand building. It is the only medium through which PR is only the medium. PR is the only medium through which a company can attract and acquire new clients, expanding into markets, retain them, retain the people who are using them, and maintain trust between them by rendering good services, making sure that people stay loyal to the organization, brand, product, service, or idea by maintaining that trust. PR is a tool that can effectively weave together all brand building and communication activities for a brand or organization. Like I said, it's an integral part of brand building where you're actually carefully managing the messaging that goes out from the brand in terms of its imagery, in terms of its dialogue, in terms of its interaction with its consumers through different media. So PR is what actually takes care of all these things in relation to brand building. So what are different tools that are used for public relations, which, like I said, directly add benefit or directly add value to all of these brands or individuals in that sense? Now, there are different kinds of tools that are used for public relations. House journals are a type which we will discuss about now. Press conferences, press release, toolkits, media tours. Most of them are exercises or activities done by a brand or an organization to make sure that the correct message goes out to the public. So in this case, we're looking at house journals. What is a house journal? House journal is a strong platform for a company to advocate its own point of views, goals, and establishments. It's an internal document that is made not for internal consumption, but for the people who are actually looking to understand what the brand is. House journal is basically a periodic publication by an establishment for its employees, customers, and other interested people. In that way, it becomes an internal as well as an external document. In-house journals are very effective means of communication. Any magazines that you see related to any kind of organizations, if you're looking at our college would probably have a house journal, which would actually be putting out messages about how good our college is and what are the services that we are offering. And it's information for both the employees who are here as well as people who are interested in joining the college and for people who are availing the services of the college. So house journals, like I said, can be internal, external, and combination of both internal and external. The internal journal is meant for internal publics, mainly employees. The external house journal is meant for external publics like dealers, shareholders, or consumers. They can also be meant for employees as well as the external public. The internal house journal serves as an important connection between the management and the employees. So you see that it's strategic, the communication that is taking place, which is why we used to say that public relations is a strategic management tool. It is a technique that is used to make sure that the strategy, which is planned out by a certain organization, is moving in the right path. And if it's not, to correct its path and to make sure that the services that are being given or the product that is being produced or the idea that is being put out is actually in line with what not just the management but the employees are also in sync with this whole ecosystem in which they are conducting their business. Another commonly used tool for public relations are press conferences. All seen what press conferences are. It is usually a large affair, not always large, but it's an open forum where you have somebody representing a brand, an individual, or an idea, or a product, or a service sitting and actually interacting with people who are part of the news media, for example. So they would actually be having a direct line of communication inside a same space with multiple people. That is what press conferences are. Press, is media, and conferences are usually any kind of gathering where discussions are taking place that involve multiple people. So press conference is one of the most commonly used important tool to advance the cause of an organization and gain coverage in newspapers, magazines, blogs, and on TV news broadcasts. You've all seen how press conferences work. People would be asking questions. First, the people who are representing would have their statement that they want to say, a properly tailored message of what they want to say. Depends on the level at which public relations is being exercised there. They would put out a statement, and following that statement would be interaction with people who want to know more about what you're trying to say to the larger public. So press conferences, also known as news conferences, are occasions when someone with something to say which they believe is newsworthy calls reporters together so they can tell them all at once. You don't have to individually call each newspaper or each television broadcaster or each radio broadcaster to let them know what you have to say. You can call everybody together and interact with all of them to make sure that you are having an open forum where everything is discussed in public. The word public and public relations, you can see the relevance of actually speaking to a lot of people at the same time. Person calling the press conference usually makes an announcement or statement first, then allows reporters to ask questions. Like I said, that is the usual modus operandi or mode of operation of how press conferences are conducted. Rather than setting up interviews with individual reporters, like I said, or sending out press releases, press conferences allow an entity to interact with a room full of journalists all at once, and this is an effective way to quickly disseminate public relation messages. The speed at which it actually travels after the press conference, the news or the message or the statement that we want to convey is very rapid when you consider this is sheer number of people that you're interacting with in a room and the networks that they have and the channels which they are through which they operate. So you're disseminating messages that you have designed as part of the uh, speech or the statement that you have given in that press conference, and it travels very fast. So that is the benefit of calling press conferences, and it is always good because it's an open forum where questions are asked and answers are given. Press releases are individual pieces of written documents which are sent out as representative of an organization stand about something or any kind of news or any kind of it's basically a document that any kind of organization or individual puts out to tell to the larger public. Press releases are usually given out in newspapers, in TV channels, in radios. It's actually a single document or a single piece of information with maybe multiple points of agenda, but still it's a press release. You're releasing something to the press, and that press release will be carefully formulated. It will be carefully written. It will be carefully edited. It will be carefully looked at by the organization itself before it is actually put out. The primary audience for the press release is news reporters and editors, although some organizations publish press release on their own websites for audiences to view. This may be done due to shrinking newsroom staff and insufficient resources to develop original content. Now, that is a limitation that they've said, but usually you would send it out to newspaper organizations if you wanted to reach a certain geography or a certain kind of readership. You would want to give it to them. If it's a larger and broader one, you would actually give it on TV stations or something. It's a statement that is put out, which is a strategic message. Uh, Press releases are used by journalists as a reporting tool, relying on them to provide essential information and therefore make it easier for them to cover a variety of events. Now, for example, if I want to give out a press release, keeping in mind that I am some sort of an individual which has an influence, my opinion has influence on the public. If I give an official statement with me as the source, it's easier for the journalist because he doesn't have to go around verifying it. I am the original source, and if I'm talking about something that me as an individual is doing or taking a stand on something, it's easier for the journalist to report it because it's coming straight from the source. With the increase in media channels and demand for social content, some view press releases as an uninteresting way to distribute information and connect with audiences. Others see them as a concise and straightforward way to communicate to key public. Now, it depends on how you want to see it. Would you rather take information directly from a source because it is tailor made by public relations experts, or would you actually go around asking people about what their opinion is? Now that is another whole spectrum of how you want to report your news. But press releases, usually what they are, as told later, as a concise and straightforward way to communicate to the key public. Although the emergence of digital media has challenged public relation professionals to think of non-traditional ways to garner publicity, the use of press releases is still widespread in the profession. Newspapers rely on public relations quite a lot nowadays, because not nowadays, from olden times itself, because it's an official source of information. Like I said, you never know what kind of verification you will have to do as a journalist if it's not coming from a official source. So the single point that it is coming from where you want the information to come to makes press releases all the more easier to do journalism, and gives a certain trust to where the information is coming from. Other tools include press kits, written material about the organization and its top people, different kinds of information about what kind of conference is actually going to happen. Any kind of event that is happening, you sort of develop a press kit, which would have different things, not just a press release, but it would also have more information. It would have videos, it would have audio clips. It's a multi-pronged approach at looking at how information can be given out from a verified source, sort of not limited to a document like a press release, but added material. Audio releases, video releases of pre-recorded messages distributed to various media channels, as you all know. Events or functions. Public relations experts organize special events, gatherings, parties to target their customers and promote their organizations and its products among them. So different ways of promotion strategies that are being employed, and these strategies are usually drawn up by public relations experts who try to identify where we need to actually relay the message first, or where we need to relay the message at this point of time. So people from media are also invited for coverage. It sort of becomes like an interaction with the public in that way. Media tours. Media tours is another common way of how people conduct public relations. If you are of an organization, you would conduct media tours for people who would come to your organization, go around and try to get bites of people who are from the organization and make sure that they are representing the organization when they talk about it. They interact and share the benefits and the unique selling points of their products and services with people from various news channels, radio channels, and even print media. Organizations also hire celebrities or other people popular among the masses to promote and publicize their organization. You would have brand ambassadors coming and speaking about the brand or that organization to give a next level approval for what they are trying to say about the organization. All these things are actually ways in which public relations are exercised. And another one is charity or corporate social responsibility. Public relations experts actually take quite a bit of a interest in this area, and they actually make sure that they try to see what or which area the brand can actually go across in engaging its social responsibility. Public relations experts engage in various social and charitable activities to publicize their organizations and its products. Organizations distribute products among target audiences to create a goodwill of their organization. One example I can give is for a company like Mahindra giving out electric scooters to promote more eco-friendly travel, basically. So and they're doing it as part of their corporate social responsibility. CSR activities is what it's called, and it's actually by law mandatory for organizations to spend a certain amount of their profits for social responsibility, for social causes. So Mahindra giving out electric scooters is actually them telling that we are doing it for a social cause, and they would actually be charging very little amount, or they might be giving it out for free. Depends on what kind of an approach they have towards CSR activities. These are usually conducted by PR experts who are from the organization itself or from the PR department. Now, what are the different types of public relations? This is not an exhaustive list. You will find more also, but broadly speaking, these are some of them. Strategic communications, like I said, how the brand is supposed to move and what direction the brand is moving to make sure that it is doing the best it can to be healthy. Media relations is all the press conference and things that I was talking about, how the brand actually interacts with the media and what kind of an image is actually brought out through the media to the people who are perceiving the brand through different channels of media such as TV, newspapers, radio, etc. Community relations, the community within which that brand is actually associated with, the geographic community, the cultural community, social community, different kinds of levels at which nearby groups that are associated with that brand. The relations are maintained by public relations. Internal communications, like I said, another very important aspect where you make sure that the people who are working for you or the people who are helping to make sure the brand stays alive are also talked to, are also communicated to. Public relations actually make sure that there are documents which go internally to make sure that the employees are all quote unquote having a good time by working for the company and increasing the health of the brand. Crisis communications is another thing that we talked about when we did the Johnson and Johnson case study, where they are actually making sure that any kind of crisis can be dealt with. Public relations is very key to actually making sure that a statement goes out addressing any kind of problem that is affecting the name of the brand. Public affairs, directly dealing with how the public actually sees it, getting feedback, making sure that it's causing a very good impression on the public, trying to review different approaches they have made, etc. Online and social media communications, as you know, social media spaces are much more livelier and you have a lot of networking that is happening inside there. You have to make sure that what you actually, the PR that you use, digital PR that we talked about in the previous session, is very key to understanding online and social media communications. Now we'll go through different areas in which public relations are actually exercised as we have seen it all around us. A very important one that we see every day in and around us is sport public relations. Uh, Public relation exercises tailored to sports. So what would actually be? It would be about promoting teams, individual players, sporting organizations through many media channels such as broadcast, print, radio, and web-based outlets. Sports PR targets editors, producers, new reporters, writers, and anchors at mass media outlets with examples such as ESPN, Sports Illustrated magazine, Sports Journal, etc. Um, it's fairly self-explanatory how you actually make sure that sporting activities and organizations related to sporting activities in very famous players, athletes, their brand is maintained consistently. Athletes today work under a microscope held by the media, their fans, and the general public. Because of this, strategic media management is extremely paramount. There is a lot of eyeballs on these people because they are very influential. Sports PR works to build and maximize an athlete's image potential, allowing the player to focus solely on perfecting their specific craft. If an athlete uh, has some other problems related to off the field antics or any other problems other than how they are performing, or even if they are not performing badly, the PR team makes sure that uh, the backlash from the public or the fans, let's say, is not affecting the player so much because they manage what kind of problems are faced by the athletes in terms of his image. Another very common field in public relations is celebrity and entertainment public relations. Celebrity public relations managers, also known as publicists, manage a public figure's image. Celebrities often have marketing teams that have to create a brand for them. You know that quite a lot of the celebrities' social media handles are not directly managed by them. Some of them are, but most of them are handled by a PR team, which makes sure very clearly that something or the other that comes to the mouth of the celebrity is not coming out. They filter it properly to make sure that the image is maintained. Some people might say something very harsh. Some people might not understand what the effect of it of saying something in to a larger public in social media. Earlier times, you need to have a crowd of people right in front of you to actually say something and get it um, evaluated by the public. But nowadays, you can type 140 within 140 characters in Twitter, and then people will crisscross it left, right, and center to say what did this person mean by that and all these things. So PR teams actually go through this whole thing of managing the image of the person, especially if he's a celebrity, because they do have their influence on how the public thinks, and it's the same way around also. If a company has created the content, now the biggest challenge for them is to market it correctly to reach the right set of people. This is where one can leverage the expertise of PR companies who can bring the right amount of market insight, expertise, experience, and talent at disposal. From creating the right buzz, the right kind of buzz, to making people compelled to take interest in a product, all this can be done through a PR agency. So effectively, PR agencies do act like advertising agencies, but they don't create advertisements for people. They usually try to design what is required. They follow some kind of a strategic path for that person or a brand and try to understand how the public perception is, so that the goodwill of the people who are actually part of the success of that celebrity or that entertainment venture is maintained. Another major important field in public relations is politics because of the sheer influence politics plays in our lives. Because it's a strategic management tool, politics is also it's a field that is laced with different strategies and different kind of communication. So it's a strategic communication process where politicians build a mutually beneficial relationship with the public, because politicians are representatives of the public. They are actually speaking for the public in different venues for different causes. So one of the major part of how they actually function is through their image of what they've built to the public. So public relations actually helps in making sure that the image is actually maintained properly for for that politician. So because it's a politician, how they are perceived is directly impacted when it comes to elections. So organizing conferences, political debates, and other relevant events is the responsibility of a PR team hired by political organizations. They look for opportunities and events that a politician can attend to increase their awareness. The role of political PR extends to many more fields such as news management, issue management, event management, and evaluation management. It is not just important that the politician's image is actually brought out as very good. It is very important for the politician to understand what the public thinks of him. Public relation teams actually try to understand and try to gauge what the public thinks of that person and try to mold the image in such a way that they are always favorable to the public. So finally, what is the importance of public relations? Now, we've talked so much about public relations. It's good to sum up what we've learned and try to understand what the importance of public relations is. For one, it increases awareness of whatever organization, individual, product, service, idea that you're actually trying to maintain. The company and the PR department primarily focuses on spreading awareness by making people understand the product specifications and brand values. What is said about the product and how it is actually presented creates that first layer of awareness for the public. Creates brand image and reputation. The company has a chance to prove its image and build up a reputation among the public through public relations practice. That is, the organization can actually make sure that the brand image is actually maintained, not only maintained but actually built up when it's starting, and the reputation is actually made at the first go. Develops loyalty is where actually the brand maintenance is actually starting to seep in. Customers generate a loyalty factor for the brand because of an intense public relations practice. They tend to buy from the company repeatedly. This is where brand loyalty plays a huge importance, and it's part of brand building, like we said in the starting. For that brand building, PR relations, like I said, is a very integral part of uh, making sure that the people who are sticking to your brand continue to stick to the brand. Promotes goodwill. Now, it's a very basic thing that if I say something, uh, other people are listening, and trust or goodwill is actually maintained only if the other person actually says something back and I listen to it. So in that sense, public relations becomes the bridge between the person who is saying something or the organization that is saying something and the public who is receiving it and responding, and their response is also taken into consideration. So public relations builds that bridge, and in the long term, PR practice paves the way for creating substantial goodwill for the company. Now, the last part is it builds trust and credibility. Like I said, repetitive brand promotion done in a way to align the company's objectives to those of the society and the target audience develops trust and credibility among the public. The more you interact with the public, the more you are actually promoting your brand relevantly, the more you're promoting your brand to the public's liking and understanding, taking their input and giving something back which they feel feels justice to them. That is how you actually build trust and credibility for a brand, and it helps quite a lot in making the brand stay very much in the game. And this is sort of like the basic thing of what public relations does. It makes sure that your brand stays healthy in the mind of the consumers, who are the ones who are actually holding the foundations of how your brand actually does. So that is it for this session. We'll move on to what a public relations officer's duties or responsibilities are and code of conduct in the next